You're listening to Cinema Jaw, the greatest movies podcast ever, recorded on location from 4 different cities. My name is Matt Kay, and with me is...
Rye the Movie Guy, and sitting alongside us is Fill Me In Phil.
Hello!
This week on Cinema Jaw, Matt, we go on an adventure with a fun party. At least we hope so, as we cover our top 5 favorite adventure parties.
Yeah. Oh, man, I am stoked for this episode. I really am. Finally, I get to, be my nerdy self.
We're doing adventure parties because we are reviewing Dungeons & Dragons Honor of Thieves. This is a movie Matt had circled, about a year ago. He was already talking it up and very excited. And if we're going to talk Dungeons & Dragons, which is something near and dear to Matt's heart, he had to get a great guest for us. Matt, who do we got coming on?
We got William Stark from the Dungeon Cast coming on. And he's a podcaster. He is a dungeon master. He's an adventurer. He's the perfect guest for this episode.
Looking at his bio, I think he's even writing books on Dungeons & Dragons. So I can't wait to talk to William.
You know how I knew he was good? He's had James D'Amato on his show. So this guy knows what's going on. Yep.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, in honor of Dungeons & Dragons, which stars Chris Pine, Matt, you are going to take William on in Chris Pine movie trivia.
Oh, Jesus. Okay.
Oh, boy. What were we thinking here? Plus, it is still William Dafoe month, so we're going to start right there. Phil, do we have a Willem Dafoe fact?
Yes. I feel like, I know I say this about week 4 for every guest we have, but I feel so much closer to Willem Dafoe now than I ever have in my life. I know him personally. He's not on my speed dial. Well, he's on mine. I'm not on his, but that's crack research none of you guys are getting. This week's fact, I also feel closer to him for. It's surrounding The Last Temptation of Christ, directed by Martin Scorsese. Marty banned smoking on the set, specifically because he had wanted to avoid photographs being taken of the actors playing biblical characters. Specifically, he highlighted Willem Dafoe, but others as well. And Willem did smoke at the time, and he just didn't want any cigarettes hanging out of his mouth. Another note for the film, Willem Dafoe could not see for 3 days because he had gotten too many eye drops to dilate the pupils of his eyes in bright sunlight and achieve a superhuman kind of effect.
Wow, that's scary.
If my workplace said, Phil, you are not allowed to smoke cigarettes, my eyes would glow beaming red too, and truly that is a superpower.
It is. I think it was smart of Marty, though. You don't want a picture taken on set of Willem Dafoe dressed as Jesus smoking a cigarette, It would just look strange.
I think it'd be pretty metal. I actually do want that, if I'm being honest.
Of course. Yeah, I would want that too.
I am angry with Martin Scorsese for denying us that.
I'm angry with Marty for a whole slew of reasons. This is just one more for the pile.
It makes me think of when we go to C2E2, the Comic-Con, and afterwards you see at the bar people dressed as Superman, and they're chugging a beer and having a good time, and it just looks so strange. So I guess that would have been pretty cool.
It would have been. Great fact.
All right. Yeah, it was a good fact. I love Willem Dafoe month. I'm sad to see it come to an end here. Matt, we do got to get the show rolling here. And without further ado, I know you're very excited because you listen to the Dungeon Cast all the time.
I do.
Our guest, William Stark, hosts the Dungeon Cast. William, welcome to Cinema Jaw.
Hi there. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, I was saying before we hit record, you guys, you and Brian, your co-host, have kind of a similar vibe to me and Ryan. So on Cinema Jaw, I think Ryan is kind of the William, where you're the lore master. You sort of brought the expertise, and at the time, at least when you guys started, Brian was not necessarily new to role playing games, but sort of.
Oh, he was quite new. I do assure you.
How did you guys get started? What was the thing that got it rolling?
So obviously when we started the podcast, I had a day job or a night job, I should say. And Brian ended up becoming my partner at that job, which I don't want to go into the details of what the job was or where the job was. But we basically worked closely together for 8 hours straight, 5 days a week. And me being obsessed with all my various obsessions, D&D being the first among them, I nonstop talked about it and got him incredibly interested in it. And on one of our days off, I got him, his brother-in-law, one of his best friends, one of my friends together. I started running games for them, and 6 months later, we started the show.
Wow. And how far along are you guys now? How many episodes?
Oh, we just did our, I think, 320th episode? Somewhere around there.
So
you.
I
It's
myself
been 7
don't,
years.
Wow.
I myself don't listen to Dungeon Cast. Sorry, but I will. But
It's
do you
okay.
guys play Dungeons and Dragons on the podcast, or just talk about Dungeons and Dragons?
So we have two shows. One show, which is not the Dungeon Cast, is where we do our actual play stuff. That show is called Super Quest Saga. It's a whole different deal, and it's a lot of fun. But for our main show, the Dungeon Cast, it is about teaching people about the game, teaching people about the lore, the mechanics, different styles of playing, different techniques of playing, and different things that you can bring to the table. And D&D is just such a deep game. It's such an old game, and there's just so much to it that we've been talking about it for 7 years, and there's no end in sight. So
I have a question for you about Dungeons and Dragons specifically, is how you got into the game. I had the benefit of having an older brother, and when you're at that age, an older brother who's into something, and he was the dungeon master, got us, the whole party going. It was very easy to get into the game. But how did you discover Dungeons and Dragons?
So that's a good question. So it's kind of a different story for me. I am the older brother in this scenario, but back when me and my good friend, who I'm still good friends with to this day, when we were like in second or third grade, elementary school, we were really into playing video games and a bunch of other stuff. We would, we went outside too, but we were a little bit indoorsy, and his older brother had a collection of old board games, right? One of these games was this awesome looking, like, it had like a castle and a big old dragon on it. It didn't say Dungeons and Dragons anywhere on it, and I had never heard of what that was. Obviously, I was like 8. But it was called Dragon Strike, this game, right? And this game came with a VHS that taught you how to play, and it had like an actual fully filmed short movie of like people actually role playing. It was
Sounds
really good.
fantastic.
Oh yeah, it was terrible, but it was fantastic. This game was like D&D Light. It was a game that was designed to get people into the concept of role playing games. And man, we played the hell out of that game. It had all these different scenarios, different maps, all this other stuff, right? So we played that probably for like a year and a half until we ran out of material. There was just nothing left to play in the game. And then we forgot about it. We just moved on. We did other things, right? And then later on, after high school, I think I was like 20 years old, we were at a fast food place, and that same buddy turns to me and he's like, "Hey man, I've been thinking about getting into Dungeons and Dragons. Would you want to play?" I was like, "Is that game kind of like that Dragon Strike game we used to play when we were kids?" He's like, "Yeah." It's basically like the adult version of that. I was like, "Dude, hell yes, let's do it." And yeah, we got the books, and next thing you know, I'm a professional dungeon master and podcaster.
That is quite a journey, man. So speaking of journeys, you're writing a book, Star Seeker's Guide to Drakenstar, right?
Yes, I am.
How is that going? Tell us about the book.
Okay, it's going great. It's a lot. I'm writing pretty much every day. I'm writing anywhere from, on the low end 500 to 3,000 words a day.
Jesus.
But it is, yeah. There's just a lot. These books are actually pretty dense because it's what you would call a source book, right? So our other show, Super Quest Saga, we ran a whole D&D 5th edition campaign with a twist of I took their characters and very early on, within the first couple episodes, launched them into future and into space, 100,000 years into the future, where high technology and high magic are all mixed together. And basically the premise was, what if we did D&D but 100,000 years in the future? And we did that whole campaign. It was a great time. The show has an awesome following, diehard fans, and they made it possible because when we did the Kickstarter for the source book for that campaign, we succeeded, and now the book's getting made. But the premise of the book is working in that same world of, this is science fiction and space opera, but with that high fantasy twist. And this is a universe in which spaceships and dragons both sail across the stars. This is a world in which lightsabers like swords and more like ancient type armors mixed with laser guns and the like. And basically, this book's designed to give dungeon masters and players the tools to operate in a world like that.
That sounds like a lot of work for you.
Yeah, it is, but I'm enjoying it.
So do you still play Dungeons and Dragons when you're not recording, like not part of the podcast? You still do campaigns? Or if you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, it's being recorded?
So I was just talking to Matt about this before we started recording. I'm about to start a campaign with my fiance and my sister. And I was telling him that this is going to be the first thing that I've played since we started the Dungeon Cast that we didn't record. Like, D&D has really fully become my job. So almost anything that we're doing, we're recording. But this one's the first one I'm doing for fun in like 8 or 9 years.
You looking forward to it? Is it kind of nice to not have the pressure?
Yeah, it's a big relief. I was telling my fiance how, like, I love D&D. Like, I made a career out of it. But the way you look at your hobby and the way you feel about your hobby does kind of change a little bit when it's all just work to you. So this is a cool way, and so far I've been feeling this way, of like kind of seeing my hobby through the eyes I had before the show. That just pure like excitement, and like, you know, there's no, you got to make sure, you know, we have all the right equipment. Got to make sure we get, you know, people who know the game well enough and are entertaining on camera. Got to make sure I'm writing the best story I possibly can. No, we're just having a good time and drinking beer. It's going to be a good time.
That's great, man. Congrats. Happy for you. Get to recharge your batteries a little.
Agreed. Throwing you on the spot, favorite monster in Dungeons and Dragons? Do you got one?
Oh, that's easy. Gelatinous ooze, man. The gelatinous cube ooze. It is by far my favorite monster. It's ridiculous. It's deadly too in its way, but it's essentially just a actual cube made of acidic ooze that has, I think, an intelligence of 1, and all it does is move around the dungeon and trick you into walking right into it because it's transparent. It's fantastic, and then it melts you and eats you alive. It's great.
One of my favorites too.
Was that technically what we saw in Dungeons and Dragons when they got stuck in that cube? Is that one?
Technically, yes.
Okay,
technically,
I wanted to make
yes.
sure. I thought that's what it was also, but I wasn't positive.
We're saying technically on that, William?
Well, I say the reason I say technically is because the thing about gelatinous ooze is that they once you have triggered it and you have gone inside it or touched it or whatever, it is aware enough to start moving towards you, and it will continue to do so because it's trying to eat you. Right? The one that we saw in the movie was
stationary.
Either trapped or it was completely stationary. It did not react to them at all. They go inside it and they get right back out as fast as they can, and it never moves or gives any clue to the audience who may not know that it could move if it chose to. That's why I say technically.
Interesting.
Fair point. Fair point.
See? We got an expert on the show here, Matt.
I know.
Back off, all right, Matt? Back off. We got an expert here.
I would have just said, hey, that's a gelatinous cube. But
oh, man. Good stuff. For the jawheads that want to check out the Dungeon Cast and the other podcasts and eventually read your book, where should we send them online, William?
I think the easiest place is probably thedungeoncast.com. That's our website. Pretty much it's the central hub. But other than that, you can just look up the Dungeon Cast on any podcast app that you use, or on YouTube. We're on YouTube as well.
Yeah.
If you just Google search us, you'll find us.
Yeah. And I'll put a link in the show notes for everyone's convenience. So if you're listening to this, go to the show notes, hit the link, boom, you're there.
So before we end this interview, my Willem Dafoe question to you, William, is this, since we're celebrating Dafoe this month. If Willem Dafoe was going to be in a Dungeons and Dragons movie, what type of character would he be?
I would say he's got to be the villain. And based off of his amazing performance as the Green Goblin, where he is in himself like as Osborn, an evil character, but then he gets that voice in his head that's almost a separate entity that he has to answer to. I would say he's going to be the villain in the movie, and he's going to be a warlock, because warlocks are basically spellcasters who consign their soul or some other price that they choose to a greater entity, and they're beholden to whatever that entity demands them to do. I think he'd kill it.
That is a good call.
It is.
Very good call.
A warlock. I mean, the guy just whips out a warlock here on us. That's awesome. I'll go with it.
Whipping out warlocks.
Good stuff. Speaking of,
that's what I do.
Speaking of warlocks, Matt, your possibly most anticipated movie of the year is here. Let's talk about it.
All right. After a trailer drop at Comic-Con's famous Hall H and a splashy debut at South by Southwest, the long-awaited Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves movie is here. While Hasbro nearly bobbled this ball with ill-conceived changes to its open gaming license, they seem to have quaffed the healing potion just in time to not fully burn the goodwill of fans. But do you need to know the difference between a hobbit and a halfling, a wizard and a sorcerer, or a D12 and a D20 to understand this movie? Or is this family fare for all to enjoy? Ryan and I settled into a short rest to let the magic screen regale us with a little bardic inspiration.
Here's the thing. We're a team of thieves. And when you do this, you're bound to make enemies. Sometimes those enemies come looking for revenge. Truth be told, we helped the wrong person steal the wrong thing. We didn't mean to unleash the greatest evil the world has ever known. But we're gonna fix it.
So how do we pull that off? Figure it out over a drink?
Probably best.
The question on everyone's mind: do you need to understand D&D to enjoy Honor Among Thieves? No, I am happy to report you do not. Of course, there are plenty of deep cuts and Easter eggs for fans, but anyone will enjoy this. In fact, bring the entire family. That being said, roll initiative, because you're about to face a slew of D&D puns from me. Honor Among Thieves opens up in a prison where Chris Pine, the bard Edgin, and Michelle Rodriguez, the barbarian Holga, give us all the backstory in the form of testimony to a parole board of sorts. We learn about their adventuring past with a party that consists of Edgin's daughter, Kira, played by Chloe Coleman, who's fresh on our minds from the movie 65, the so-so sorcerer Simon, played by Justice Smith, and the con artist Forge, played by Hugh Grant. When the latter betrays them, it's up to Edgin, Holga, and Simon, with the help of shape-shifting Doric, played by Sophia Lillis, and Paladin Zenk, played by Regé-Jean Page, to rescue Kira, stop an evil wizard, and save the realm. And perhaps get some loot and magic items along the way, of course. My only minor gripe with D&D is some questionable editing. Honestly, it only happened once or twice. Most of the action is quite clear, but there are a few minor instances of characters getting injuries that I didn't see on screen. Perhaps that's due to my own slowness, or perhaps there were a few bad edits. Probably the latter. But honestly, that's the only flaw I can suck out of this otherwise surprisingly good movie. The casting is superlative. Chris Pine is perhaps at his best here. This is the exact Kirk-like charming role that he excels with. And frankly, Michelle Rodriguez has never been better as the ass-kicking Holga. The Justice Smith and Regé-Jean Page continue to move up in my book. And while Hugh Grant seemed to not quite have the energy of his castmates, he's so good as the smarmy villain that, you know, what am I doing here energy felt like it was intentional. No, we won't be discussing these performances at Oscar time, but I'm here to tell you that they were a +1 cut above what I was expecting. I was surprised by how each of the two leads gave us nuanced performances, and a lot of credit belongs to the screenwriter-directors Jonathan Goldstein and John Francis Daley. The duo have collaborated a bunch, most notably as the screenwriters of Spider-Man No Way Home, and it's fair to say that the Marvel tone of humor mixed with heroics is all over this film, with Guardians of the Galaxy and Avengers flavors in the mix. I mean that as a big compliment. This is the best non-Marvel heroic team-up since perhaps No Way Home. The comedy and the action beats are so finely balanced with some amazing effects and belly laughs that they are never at odds with one another. One particularly hilarious sequence takes place in a graveyard where the team digs up some corpses to ask them a very limited amount of questions. I mentioned Easter eggs. So for the devoted, allow me to cast Detect Magic. Fans of D&D will recognize many monsters, including Displacer Beasts, Owlbears, what may or may not be gelatinous cubes, and mimics, just to name a few. Reach further into this bag of holding, and you'll find many familiar spells, locations, and even a character or two. There are some deep references to the old Saturday morning cartoon, as well as winks to popular rules, magic items, and even an NPC. And if that all sounded like a gibbering mouther to you, fear not. You can sit back, enjoy your popcorn, and just have fun as these references whiz by like errant magic missiles. They do not matter at all to the plot. So pulling from this deck of many things was a major gamble. This is a big budget movie in an unproven space. I wonder if Hasbro has burned too many bridges with their recent gaming license blunder. I wonder if the D&D branding will help or hinder this film. I do hope that fans and general audiences alike will give this a chance. As D&D or not, this is just a fun fantasy adventure comedy, very worth your gold.
Yeah.
What did you guys think?
I had a total blast with this one, Matt. I think tonally it was perfect. I didn't expect it to be as funny as it really was. The adventure, fantastic. I think it's going to cross over to movie fans if they give it a chance. I do fear that they're going to stay away because it's like Dungeons and Dragons, that's this over here. You know, I'm not into that. So I hope people listening to this podcast realize we're praising it and saying that, yes, this crosses over to, if you liked Guardians of the Galaxy, I think this is the closest thing to compare it to. I went into Guardians not knowing anything about that and had a good time. Same if people came into Dungeons and Dragons, they will enjoy it. The plot may be a bit predictable and one of the weak spots here.
Fair. But
the writing is so sharp and witty throughout that you're smiling and laughing with these characters. Loved Chris Pine. I mean, I didn't think it was going to work as well as it did. I'm kind of blown away that it was as good as it is. How about you, William?
You know, I enjoyed it. I would definitely qualify it as, it was a fun movie. It was just a fun movie. It's not going to win any Oscars. No one's going to win any awards for it, but it was a good movie. And I think casting was fantastic. As you said, I don't know if Michelle Rodriguez has ever been better. She might have been my favorite character if it wasn't for, what was the paladin's name? Was it Zant?
Yeah, Zank or something like that.
Zank, man, he had me dying laughing, and he was such a good character. Yeah, and as a dungeon master, like, he's obviously what you call in the game a DM NPC,
right?
Is, you know, this is the tool you're using to get your players to do what you want, because otherwise they'll just go and cause havoc. But no, it was a really good movie. It kept the humor at appropriate levels throughout the entire film. At no point did I feel like any jokes missed. But there were some jokes that hit really, really well, better than others. And I think comparing it to Guardians of the Galaxy is apt because of any of the Marvel movies, that movie is the most D&D like, where you have just a party of misfit adventurers who don't necessarily want to do the same thing, but ended up being united by a common goal, which is very much what this movie is. But all in all, I liked it. It was a good movie, and it's easily the best D&D movie we've ever gotten.
Oh, for sure.
So I got some highlights written down. See what you guys think here. So Chris Pine, for me, I felt like he was channeling Jason Bateman, and I mean that in a good way, with being very sarcastic. And you know how Bateman can deliver jokes, like it's just coming, and he's delivers the joke, and he's on to the next line super fast. I loved Chris Pine in this. It sounds like you guys were both fans as well.
That's some pretty high praise comparing him to Bateman. I liked Chris Pine in this a lot. I don't know if I'd quite go that far, but I'm glad you are. I really am.
Next highlight I have here is the fat dragon. I don't know if this is an inside joke that there's supposed to be fat dragons, but I've never seen one. I mean, a dragon comes out and it's this plump, fat dragon. I've never seen anything like it. I thought that was hysterical.
So this is from my limited understanding of the fat dragon, who I also really like that whole sequence. So this movie is set in a very specific D&D setting called the Forgotten Realms, which is probably their most successful setting. It's got a whole line of novels going back like 30 years. And in that setting, this dragon, this overweight dragon, from my understanding, does actually exist. So it wasn't just a joke. It was like, no, this is an actual dragon that exists, and we're putting him right here in the movie. So I know there's a lot of Forgotten Realms fans out there that are probably pretty pleased with a lot of the Easter eggs throughout this whole movie.
I'm a Forgotten Realms fan. That's where my home campaign is set, but I was
Okay.
not aware of the Fat Dragon. I haven't gotten through all the novels. I've read some of the Waterdeep stuff. That's about it.
Gosh, there's so many. There's
Oh,
so
yeah.
many novels.
Another highlight here. What do you guys think? The druid changing shapes in that wonderful chase sequence where we get, the druid can change into whatever. I don't know if it has to be an animal. I don't know the rules exactly, but it can change into different beings. And it's a wonderful chase sequence where we see this happen repetitively. Fantastic.
It's funny you bring this up, and I'm going to let William talk about it a little bit more because this is probably one of the more controversial things for the fans is Doric's powers. And go ahead, William, you can explain this better than me.
So I'll say this. So the movie takes a lot of liberties with hand-waving rules for something that's really cool. We say cool over rules, right? It's a thing that you see at tables a lot. And this is one of those cases. So one of the rules that they did follow was, they followed for the most part, was that druids can only turn into monsters that have the quote-unquote beast category. So, animals, bears, deer, mice, hawks, etc., etc. But the other main rule about wild shape in at least the most current edition of D&D is that you can only do it twice a day. She wild shapes like 12, 13,
Boom,
14
boom,
times
boom.
in that scene. But guess what? Like for me, as both a person who likes movies and as a dungeon master, in this case, I don't care. It was really cool.
Yeah, no problems with the owlbear shape either.
No, I wouldn't, because I would let my player do that, because I take all these rules as mere suggestions anyways. But yeah, I think there's a lot of people out there who are a little bit more what you call rules lawyery who would probably have problems with both those things. But yeah, the owl bear is not technically a beast. I think it's a monstrosity in 5th edition D&D. But I mean, it was cool, man. And
Right.
like, honestly, I feel like owl bears are definitely something a druid should be able to turn into. It shouldn't be an issue. I thought it was awesome.
Yeah. I mean, as not the expert D&D guys as you are, watching that particular scene, I was like blown away on how creative they were that the druid kept changing shapes. I was on board. So I think you're right, William. Cool over rules. It worked, Last one I have here is how they were able to explain. I mean, really, the movie is set up with tons of main set pieces. And each one, they were able to explain exactly what they needed to achieve in that particular set piece. And probably the best example of this is the maze that pops up, and they got to run through the maze. Like they're able to like sort of talk you through as a viewer and not, champion D&D player myself, that you understood what were the stakes that needed to be done and accomplished in each scenario that they were in. And kudos to them, because I followed along perfectly. It was almost like they were setting it up like a dungeon master, right?
Yeah, I actually think that's an excellent point. One of the things about this movie is the plot moves, man. The plot, it goes and you get to location after location. And at no point was I confused. At no point did I not understand for a second what needed to be done and what the goals and motivations were. So yeah, I think it's an excellent point.
I have 2 quick points here. First of all, I want to highlight the scenery, because this movie is beautiful. They're not just on a green screen. They actually took the time to be in real locations. They dressed them up, and no doubt there's some digital effects there too, but it just looks gorgeous. Some of the backdrops are phenomenal. And the other thing I wanted to mention was there's a sequence toward the middle that reminded me of being at the table, where some powers, some magical items are used in a very creative way. It's a bit of a heist sequence where they're trying to get inside of a wagon that's moving. I don't want to spoil it because it's an amazing sequence, but that's the kind of creativity that I've seen happen at a table, and that's like the true spirit of D&D. I was so happy with that. They could have like played to the audience, and they could have had fun at the expense of D&D, but it really felt like this was made with love, from people who understand it. Those are my 2 points.
Yeah, I agree with both those points. And on that scene that you're talking about that we're not going to explain here, that is very much something you see at a table where you as a dungeon master, you have all this stuff planned out, and then next thing you know, your players get together and they're like, wait, I have the item and you have this ability, and maybe if we did this, the next thing you know, they're doing something wild that you never could have foreseen. And that's exactly what that scene was like.
Oh, I love it.
Good stuff. We like to do jaw-dropping moments, like a highlight that we haven't maybe discussed yet. Matt, what's yours?
All right, the halfling cameo. I'm not going to say who the cameo is, but Holga seems to have an affinity for halflings. Most people might know halflings as hobbits. These are smaller
I forgot
sized
about this part. This is great. Yeah.
smaller sized, otherwise human looking people. You know, Lord of the Rings hobbits. And boy, oh boy, that cameo was freaking hilarious. Just hilarious. How about you, Rye?
Something we haven't mentioned yet here is the Red Witch.
Sure.
And I loved the look of the Red Witch in general throughout the entire movie. She's got this like bald head. There's one scene where Hugh Grant comes in on the witch and she's got the her hood off, and he's like, "Well, you know, maybe try wearing the hood all the time." It's just very Hugh Grant humor.
Rude.
It's hysterical. But I just wanted to highlight the Red Witch, her look throughout, and I commented even to Matt when we came out. I loved when she got angry. She got scarier looking. The tone, the color in her face changes. Her eyes looked deeper and scarier. So the Red Witch was a complete highlight for me.
How about you, William? You got one?
You kind of took mine a little bit with the Red Wizard. I don't remember her name. She was an amazing villain, but mine is semi-related. It was the entire sequence where the Paladin Zinc goes into his backstory, and the tonal shift from this movie's really funny and it's a lot of fun in this to like, oh no, there's some real stakes here, and look at this terrible scene that plays out when you find out this dude's tragic backstory. I liked it for two reasons. Number one, the juxtaposition, but number two is it's very common in D&D for characters to have like crazy tragic backstories on that level, and to see it play out but to be taken seriously was really cool.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's some actual real emotion in this film that isn't played for laughs. There's some sweet and tender moments like between the father and daughter where I actually almost got choked up a little bit. They balanced it really well. Good writing.
Yeah, I agree.
They did. Movie poster quote, Matt?
I was basically I stayed away from puns and dice references on my quote. I said, you don't need to know anything about the game to enjoy this fine adventure comedy. Go see it. Critical hit.
I didn't avoid puns or
Of course
dice
not.
references, so I went with Honor Among Thieves rolls a 20.
Yeah, that's probably going to be everyone's quote. How many jaws here, Ryan?
Yeah. Now, William, we're on a 4-jaw scale, so four is the best. Believe it or not, Matt, this may knock your socks off. I went 3.5 jaws for Dungeons
Wow.
and Dragons Honor of Thieves.
I'm considering going up. I went 3.25. But I'm going to see it again, and it may get that extra half jaw for me and get to 3.5. I loved it.
William, how many?
So I'm going to go just a tad lower, only because I know there's just so much more potential for a D&D movie. Although this movie really was good, I'm going to give it 3 out of 4.
All right. So all very positive. Was it a bit of a relief, William, being so into Dungeons and Dragons, and then this is finally a big, treatment of the material? Was it kind of a relief? All right, they didn't screw this one up.
Yeah, a little bit. There was a part of me up. Well, honestly, when I saw the trailer, I was already pretty optimistic. I was like, okay, they did what I always thought you should do if you tried to make a D&D movie, but make it like actually good. And that's to go the Marvel route. Like you want the humor, you want it to be able to take itself seriously, but also not take itself too seriously. And still have those tender moments and whatnot, just like Guardians of the Galaxy, one of my favorite movies of all time. Love both those movies. I was optimistic going in, but yeah, to actually see it and it kind of kept that tone all the way through. Yeah, I'm really happy with it. It's cool to see something that for so long most people either had never heard of, or if they had, there's a lot to make fun of for whatever the nerdiness of it all. But no, it was taken seriously. It was done well. They took Forgotten Realms, a well-known setting in the zeitgeist of D&D, and they treated it with respect, and at the same time they portrayed the humor that happens at the table, because that is the thing about D&D is like, yeah, you go on these epic adventures and you do all this cool stuff and you have serious emotional moments, but most of the time you're just sticking around and having fun and having laughs, and this movie had all of that. It was great.
Agreed. Does this start a franchise? Does this launch the D&D U?
I think it really comes down to box office. Let's be honest. If the money's not there, they're not going to go for it. And I'm still worried, even though we're giving it a glowing review here. And from what I've seen, the early reactions online have been positive. I still worry about the crossover. That's why I'm telling people listening to this podcast, do go see it, even if you don't know anything about Dungeons and Dragons, but you're looking for a good adventure movie. This is it.
Yeah, same here.
3 Jaws for William, 3.25 for Matt K. Rye, the movie guy, out in front with 3.5 Jaws for Dungeons and Dragons, Honor of Thieves. It opens up on Friday, the 31st. So Jawheads, when you do see it, shoot us a tweet at CinemaJaw or our email, feedback@cinemajaw.com. Let us know what you think of this flick. In honor of this movie, we're doing our favorite adventure parties. These are the groups that go on an adventure. Not necessarily has to be, sword and sandal or in the Dungeons and Dragons realm. We allow ourselves to be creative and just an adventure party within a movie. William, you're our guest. Was this a tough list to come up with, or actually difficult to narrow down to 5?
It was it's actually difficult to come up with because maybe I was being a little too narrow on what I thought counted as an adventuring party, but I ended up coming up with the list. The first 3 were easy. It was after that getting those last 2 was a little difficult.
Well, we go 5-1. So kick us off with your number 5.
All right, so I was telling Matt this before we started recording that 4 out of my 5 are really well known. You guys will have seen these movies, and most of your audience will probably have seen these movies. But my number 5 is a real dark horse, and it ties back to what I was talking about earlier this episode, where I mentioned that board game Dragon Strike, that D&D-like game. This thing came with a VHS that had a short film on it that taught you how to play the game while also playing out an entire adventure. I think it's like a 45-minute movie. And is this movie low budget? Absolutely. Is it terribly acted? Absolutely. Is it super cheesy and campy? No doubt. But it's also amazing. It really hits that it's so bad it's good level. And you could tell like everyone who was there part that was part of this movie was doing their best. And it captured that awesome energy of 4 heroes going on a quest to save the land from an evil wizard. Very, very cliche stuff. But as a young, I've seen that movie probably like 8 or 9 times since my childhood, and I still love it to this day.
Nice.
Is there anywhere you can you find it anywhere?
The only place I found it is the full movie is on YouTube. I don't know how legal that is, but it's there. You just look up Dragon Strike movie 1993, and you'll be able to watch it.
Nice.
All right. I know what I'm doing.
I forced my fiance to watch it last year. It was great.
Matt,
should I go next, Ryan?
Sure,
all right, here we go. At number 5, I am going with Dutch's Commandos from the movie Predator. And I took an extra step here on my list, and I did my best to list what D&D class I think each character falls into best. So for Dutch, who's of course Arnie, I would call him the Bard because he's like the leader. He inspires everybody. Dylan, who was Carl Weathers, he's the rogue. He's kind of slimy. He's tricking people. He's got double deals going on. Billy, the one who first senses the predator, is a sorcerer. Just go with it. He's kind of shamanistic. Mac, the one who says behind those trees, he is the fighter. And of course, Blaine, the guy with the giant machine gun, would be the barbarian.
Nice.
I like that.
What you got, Ryan?
I like that you can somehow tie D&D into Predator. Fantastic, Matt. I actually did the same. When I looked at my list, I tried to classify the characters for Dungeons and Dragons. My number 5 is the most traditional adventure party that I have on my list, I think. Okay. And it came out in 2021, and it sticks out because it was the first film that we went to a movie theater for. At least I did, for the press screening. It was such a relief to be out of the pandemic, or at least, out of the house. And it was for Raya and the Last Dragon, animated Disney movie. And it really does play out exactly like an adventure party all the way around. You have Raya, obviously, who's a warrior. You got a dragon voiced by Aquafina. But then they go to these different islands and collect different people. And you even get sort of like the thief, who's the little baby. You have a 10-year-old boy who's like the planner of the group, maybe a ranger. And then a big-hearted barbarian also joins them in their group. So it very much has the feeling of an adventure party in Raya and the Last Dragon.
That is a good pick. I like it, dude.
Yeah, I like that one.
Into
All
our
right, so next up
fours.
into the fours and back to the 90s with me. 1999, The Mummy, starring Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz. It is very much an adventure party movie, and D&D done in a pulp adventure style. We have Brendan Fraser, who's like the daring rogue, and then we have Rachel Weisz is like the scholar or the wizard, but I guess there's no magic, so more like the scholar. And then her brother is like the gambler or the bard in a way. And then when we get to the sequel, they get that I don't know the actor's name, but he's the Magi warrior, and he reminds me very much of like a fighter / wizard character. He's got all this knowledge and all this kind of like esoteric lore, but also he's great with a sword. And they do their epic adventures. I love The Mummy. It's one of my favorite movies, and it's very much an adventure and party movie.
I agree. It had this great Indiana Jones vibe too. It's a shame they didn't keep it going beyond the second movie was such a step down, and then after that the whole thing fell apart with all the spin-offs and stuff. But that first one, amazing. I'm gonna kick it back even further into the 80s. 1986. This is a movie we talk about far too seldomly on Cinema Jaw, The Three Amigos. And as far as their D&D class, of course, they would all be bards, which a group of 3 bards is comedy gold right off the bat. And the thing that makes this such an adventure, I don't know if you guys remember this movie, but at one point they have to fight an invisible swordsman and talk to a burning bush, and things go completely off the rails. It's an absurdist Western where they're dressed in like mariachi suits. They're actors, but they find themselves embroiled in a real plot. Listen, if you haven't seen Three Amigos, or it's been a very long time, rewatch it. It holds up. It's still funny, man.
It's been a long time for me. I've seen it a couple of times, but it's been years since I've actually sat down and watched Three Amigos. I should do it again.
Comedy titans. I got to mention Martin Short, Chevy Chase, and Steve Martin. Comedy titans.
Nice. All right, my number 4 pick. I came up there. It's a group of 4, and I came up with categories for 3 of them. But I'm going to need your guys' help for the 4th one. I think this is definitely an adventure party film. Came out in 2009, even though it takes place during the zombie apocalypse. I went with Zombieland.
Ooh.
And
Okay, I like that.
A 4-person party, right? And I had Woody Harrelson as the warrior.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, I think that tracks. Tracks.
I had Eisenberg as a ranger. He was sort of talking about all his rules on exactly how to survive the zombie apocalypse.
Was a survivalist. He was
right.
He was a survivalist. It was like an art to him figuring out how to get it done. Yeah,
right.
I agree with that.
So
I more into the stealth too. So yeah,
right. So I thought maybe Ranger would be good. Abigail Breslin, she was the young girl in the movie. I had her as the thief because I believe she does steal something from one of the two. She's definitely
Don't remember.
she's a rogue. Yeah.
Yeah. But Emma Stone is in the movie, and I didn't know what category I would place her.
I don't know.
one.
Yeah, I would throw her into like some kind of magic user. You know, she's sort of the wise one who advises them, and she's the only one who really knows what's going on in any given scene. So yeah, I would say she was probably the wizard or the sorcerer or something like that.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
A cleric? Can I go cleric?
Sure. I think she does like patch some wounds at one point. So yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Healer.
All right. Well, Zombieland, my number 4. Into our 3s we go.
Into the 3. So this is a big one. Star Wars original trilogy. That's an adventure right there. Yeah, I mean Luke, Leia, Han, and Chewie are obviously the rogues. I would go as far as to say is Luke is the the burgeoning like hero, the paladin, but the paladin in training at the beginning who becomes the paladin at the end. With Obi-Wan is the actual paladin mentor, the knight. Yeah, no, I mean it doesn't get better than Star Wars: The Original Trilogy.
Yeah, I was toying with the Rogue One cast.
Well,
yeah. Oh, I'm gonna save it. Save it.
Dan, don't steal anything here, Matt.
Saving it. All right. I'm picking this one mostly because I champion this movie all the time, much to Rye's chagrin, and I think it's really interesting to classify these characters. So I'm going with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which I think is one of the most criminally underrated movies of my youth. I think it still holds up to this day, effects and all. It's a great movie. That being said, what are the Turtles' D&D
You said that so
classification?
seriously too. That was fantastic, Matt. Well done.
I mean, they all have to be monks, right? They're all martial artists.
I thought about that, but here's where I went. So Donatello is the artificer, right? Which is a newer class.
Yeah.
Ryan,
Yeah.
He's the tinkerer. He makes machines.
What's the class?
It's called artificer.
Artificer.
They're basically inventors that use magic to invent stuff. That's the easiest way to explain it.
I'll give it to you.
Leo is the monk. He takes martial arts very seriously. He's the one who meditates the most. He's the monk. Mikey is either a rogue or a bard. Take your pick. He's kind of a little bit wild. And then
Raph's the barbarian, right?
Raph's a barbarian. You got it. Of course. Boom.
Yep. Yeah. No, I can agree with that. I think that's pretty spot on. I like that.
There you go.
Really quick, not to sidetrack us too much, but there's a new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movies coming out. Are you excited for that?
It looks pretty cool.
Yeah, looks pretty good.
I think so. I think it looks cool.
Yeah, we were in the D&D movie, and my son was sitting next to me. He's 15, and he elbowed me saying, "Oh, that looks like the Spider-Verse." I'm like, yeah, they really stepped their game up in animation in general.
Nice. All right, back into the list. My number 3, and this is why I didn't want you to steal it. Believe it or not, I had Star Wars at number 3, but I went Rogue One here, William. And
It's a good movie.
I really, when I thought Adventure Party, yes, the original trilogy is the king of all. But then I was like, man, Rogue One, you got Jen Erso, Cassian Andor. He would be what? Cassian Andor would be the thief.
I would say he was an assassin, like kind of a specialized
assassin. Yeah, not bad. Then you got K2SO, the droid. I don't know what we would put him at, but wonderful party member as well. Riz Ahmed's in there. And also, you got a samurai in there as well.
Are you talking about Donnie Yen?
Yeah.
So he would be the monk, obviously.
Yeah, I think monk. Yeah, monk for sure. I can see samurai fighter, but he was definitely a monk.
And then what's his friend's name? Baze, right?
Right, Baze.
Barbarian all the way.
Nice.
K2SO, I don't know. That's another one like Emma Stone. I would probably throw Wizard because
I was going to say Wizard also. I mean, granted, he's not using magic, but he is in a way. He's the one that opens up the doors,
still,
or he's,
right.
So on and
It
so
plays
does
the
things
same
the other
role, the
characters.
same archetype.
Right.
Yeah, but yes, Rogue One, total adventure party movie for sure. We're going to take a break right here. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Get a glass of water, a beer if you're drinking. And when we come back, we'll name our top 2 favorite adventure parties. We got a little feedback to read as well concerning Matt Kay's wife, believe it or not. She made the feedback bag, Matt. I mean, what did you do wrong? What did you do wrong? We'll find out.
Is the feedback from her? Oh, no, now I'm scared.
Plus, we're going to play some movie trivia. Stick with us.
I'm speaking only for myself here, but I personally have always seen William Dafoe as a butts-to-nuts bonkers, crackpot, loony-balloony nutcase with a heart of solid gold. For how good this man is at being crazy, his characters always seem to have this softer side to them, which I think is part of what makes him so lovable. Take Finding Nemo, for example. In this Pixar film, which, yes, I realize Phil is picking a Pixar clip again. Dafoe plays Gil, the hardened escape artist desperately trying to break free from his prison in scenic Sydney, Australia. While the mastermind of many a failed jailbreak, he's also a very sensitive and caring fish, serving not only to meet his own goals, but also liberate his friends back into the ocean with him. Gil serves as a temporary father father figure to Nemo in a lot of ways, and shows the young clownfish the power that's within himself through the persistent belief that no matter what it is, Nemo can do it. It's really sweet and really nice and really wholesome, and honestly, just listen to the clip.
Polly right! He just grabbed the Reader's Digest. We have 4.2 minutes.
That's your cue, Sharkbait.
You can do it, kid.
Okay, we gotta be quick. Once you get in, you swim down to the bottom of the chamber, and I'll talk you through the rest.
Okay.
Go on, it'll be a piece of kelp. Nicely done! Can you hear me? Yeah. Here comes the pebble. Now, do you see a small opening?
Uh-huh.
Okay, inside it, you'll see a rotating fan. Very carefully wedge that pebble into the fan to stop it turning. Easy, careful, Sharkbait.
I can't do it.
Gil, this isn't a good idea.
You'll be fine. Try again.
Okay.
That's it, Sharkbait. Nice and steady.
I got it.
He did it! Phew, that's great, kid. Now, swim up the tube and out. Sharkbait!
Oh my
Get
gosh!
him out of there! Get him out of there!
Help him! What do we do? Oh, no!
Stay calm, kid. Just don't panic.
Help me!
Sharkbait, grab hold of this. Feed me more.
That's it!
Come on, Sharkbait. Grab it.
I got it!
Whoa!
Gil, don't make him go back in there.
No. We're done.
And we are back on Cinema Jaw, hanging out with William Stark from the Dungeon Cast, expert Dungeons and Dragons fan and podcaster who just reviewed Dungeons and Dragons with us. Before we open the fish tank and get back to our list and so forth and play some trivia, I did want to ask William, I had this really strange thing that my Dungeons and Dragons group did growing up. Again, I was a kid, my brother 5 years older than me, so he was really running the party here. When one of our characters died, and this was, a piece of paper, the character, we would carry that piece of paper out to our grill, and we would all stand around the grill. This is a true story. And we would light fire to our character and do this sort of little seance around the grill. And literally there were times I wept because I might have got the character up to 13th level and it was a big deal for me. And then the character died. And then it was like, you have to burn it. You have to burn it, Ryan. And I'd go out there. I don't want to burn my character. And I'd light it up and it would go up in flames. And it was a sad moment. Do you guys do anything odd or in particular a strange thing like that or tradition?
Nothing quite on that level. That sounds borderline traumatizing, man. But also kind of cool. I kind of dig it. I might consider it moving forward. I think the only thing that's a strange or superstitious is when you're, especially when you're a player, when you're a DM, this doesn't really happen, but when you're a player and you're rolling and you're just rolling cold all night, it's not too uncommon to take that dice and chuck it in dice jail until it learns to behave itself. So that's about as strange as it gets at my table.
I like it. How about you, Matt? Anything goofy going on there with the Kabinskis?
That's okay. So at our new game, nothing jumps out at me, man. I mean, I'm also thinking I might take the character sheets and put them on a little boat, float them out onto Lake Michigan, and shoot at them with flaming arrows, because that's awesome. But yeah, nothing strange. We definitely do a lot of dice jail and extra advantages for my 8-year-old. When you roll with advantage, that means you roll 2 20-sided dice and you take the highest roll. So, which is part of the rules, but we probably use that rule liberally. So I guess that's the closest thing I got.
Nice. Good stuff. All right. Before we get on with our list, let's open up the fish tank. I asked Phil if he could look up something about Dragon Strike. Phil, are you there?
Wait a moment! It's fish! Isn't it?
DC! Wake up!
No, Pat, it's a giant glass bowl. Hey, there's some fish folk.
Who's coming with me besides Flipper? Here.
That's a Sicilian message. It means Luca Brasi sleeps with the fishes.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Yes, thank you all so much for letting me out of the fish tank this week. It's nice to have a breath of fresh air, especially because I was always, I mean, you guys, Matt and Ryan and the Jawheads know me a lot better than William do, right? I was always like an anime kid, and it takes me so long for my brain to translate like Final Fantasy a role type and character type into Dungeons and Dragons, but I'm catching up. I did. So listen, we all know I tried to see where all Dragon Strike was streaming, and as far as I can tell, it is only YouTube for streaming. It is not on Hoopla, which breaks all of our hearts, but none more than mine. What I did find out though, okay, and it's relatively inexpensive, less than the cost of your Netflix subscription each month. You can't, people are still, I mean, of course they are. People are selling the VHSs on eBay. I went out of my way to find what you can do to watch Dragon Strike, and you can find the VHSs still. They are as low as $6 plus $4.99 shipping and handling. However, okay, Jawheads, this is a hot ticket item. As far as we know, this will all be gone by the time this episode comes out, okay?
They're flying off the shelves.
There is one listing here, okay? And as a Cinema Jaw fan, you owe it to yourselves. This person could have had their own top 5 list for this show with this 6-piece VHS collection featuring Dragon Strike, Krull, Excalibur, 2001 Space Odyssey, and Highlander 2 for $15 free shipping. I will shamelessly shill this person. Somebody has to buy this.
I might buy it. Jesus, that sounds too good to be true.
That is fantastic.
Seriously.
What a
Then
find by Phil.
Go to a pawn shop and find a VHS player. Who knows?
Awesome. Good stuff. Hey, while we're still in the fish tank, I teased this. We got multiple feedback concerning one topic that came up last week on the show, and that was Matt's wife actually got mentioned by Matt K, and 2 people wrote in on it, and I wanted to mention them both.
What did I say? Now I'm really scared.
Let me read them both, and then you can respond, okay, Matt? Up first was Movie Mitch 24 wrote in, and he said, I had a laugh when Matt seemed to throw his wife under the bus for not liking Everything Everywhere All at Once.
True story.
Right after saying what a great film it is and discussing all the awards it won. Does she listen to the podcast? Maybe a future Cinema Award, guys. Secondly, hold
Go
on.
ahead. I'm going to hold till the end. Go ahead.
Then secondly, Aaron Schmeling, who writes us from time to time on Twitter, wrote in, Cinema Jaw, not sure what Matt's wife didn't like about Everything Everywhere All at Once, but my mom tried watching it. But I do guess I guess that it was too complicated for her with all the different worlds. So maybe she took it a little bit more seriously. But people wanted to know, what's with Matt throwing his wife under the bus?
Okay. I stand by everything I said. She didn't give the movie a proper chance. She was antsy. She got up. She went to the bathroom 3 or 4 times. It just wasn't for her, I guess. I don't think I was necessarily throwing her under the bus. But I think that the Oscars threw her under the bus after this movie swept all the awards it got. I mean, clearly she missed something, you know? That's all I'm going to say. And as far as a future Cinema War, I say that would be amazing. I will absolutely have that Cinema War. I may regret it, but I would do it for the show, Ryan. I would absolutely do it for the show.
It may end in divorce, but Jawheads...
Hey, anything for Cinema Jaw.
You know... Here's what I love too, right? If the divorce does come to fruition, then we can have a redemption arc for Matt, because I love that the response to Matt throwing Heather under the bus is the Jawheads throwing Matt under the bus. Like we love being under buses here. I think all three of us. Cinema Jaw really should just change its name to Cinema Under the Bus.
Yeah, she's not gonna get upset by that. She knows. She knows she was wrong about everything everywhere all at once.
All right. That's everything in the fish tank, Phil.
You got it.
Jump back in there. All right, back to our lists. We have gone through our top 3 into our heavy hitters here. We jump back into our favorite adventure parties with our number 2s, William.
Oh, yeah, you're right. These are the heavy hitters. So the next one is my favorite Marvel movie, Guardians of the Galaxy. I've always said this since day one. This is just a D&D movie set in space. It's actually one of the biggest inspirations for the book Star Seeker's Guide to Drakenstar. But yeah, we have 5 misfit adventurers with completely different motivations, all kind of culminate to one singular goal. We have Chris Pratt obviously playing the rogue, the thief, the smooth talker. Gamora is obviously the fighter, probably one of the greatest in all of Marvel Studios history. Rocket is definitely the artificer. Drax is definitely the barbarian, and I would say Groot, especially in the first movie, is definitely the druid.
Oh, good call. Yeah.
Right, the druid. That's good. Like that.
Yeah,
that
so
is
that's
good.
my number 2. It's a fantastic film. Love that movie.
I was down on Marvel for a very long time, and when I saw Guardians of the Galaxy, I was completely blown away, and I had never even heard of the Guardians of the Galaxy until the movie came out. So I had no,
before that movie
came
out,
back knowledge,
Yeah, before that movie came out, a lot of people were certain it was going to fail just based off the trailer.
Right.
Even I was a little pessimistic, but yeah, after I saw it, I went from being like a 7 out of 10 level Marvel Studios fan to just 10 out of 10. I'm ride or die. Let's Infinity War. Let's go. Like Guardians of the Galaxy really got me there.
All right, swinging it to my number 2. I honestly had Rogue One written down, so I'm going to sub one in because I have a bunch of honorable mentions. And I'm going to stay away from Marvel because I could go the Avengers and it would be super easy. But I'm going to go with one of the adventuring parties from a sword and sorcery type movie, Conan the Destroyer. And I prefer the Destroyer in particular because of, oh my God, I'm having a brain fart. What's that guy's name? He's in the first Batman movie. He plays the Joker's henchman. He's that guy. He pops up in so many movies.
Throw it in the fish tank. We'll have a late fish tank.
All right. Anyway, he's in it as the thief. You got Grace Jones as sort of, I guess she would be a warrior. There's a couple of barbarians like Wilt Chamberlain and obviously Conan, Arnold Schwarzenegger. That's the second time he's on my list. Both barbarians. And there was something about this movie that I liked more than Conan the Barbarian. It just had that D&D feel to it. It was a little bit more campy, a little bit more schlocky in the best possible way. And that is my substitute for Rogue One.
Nice pick.
Nice sub, yeah.
Haven't seen the Conan movies in the longest time, but I remember as a kid loving Conan Barbarian and the Destroyer.
Yeah.
So my number 2 pick, classic film. It's come up plenty of times, so we're not going to dwell on it too much, but what an adventure party. 1985, The Goonies. We have an Oscar winner, right? We now have an Oscar winner.
You're
part of
stealing
the
my number
Goonies.
1. Go ahead.
Data. And I got Data as the wizard. Agreed, or would you have him at, Matt? I got
Artificer.
Data as the wizard.
Artificer,
yeah.
But there are magical. There are magic users.
A half hour earlier, I didn't even know what an artificer was. Now you guys got me saying, okay, he's an artificer. I'm agreeing with you. All right, he's an artificer. Chunk, I got as a dwarf.
It's not a class, but yeah, okay.
Well, it's not a class, but if you go back to first edition D&D, it was a class. Back then, your race and class were tied together.
Right, and that's probably what I was playing as a kid. Mouth, I have as a thief.
Yeah.
Okay.
He steals the jewels in his mouth. Remember?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
he does. I have him somewhere else. We'll wait because it's at my number 1 also.
And Mikey, I guess would be. I'm confused on Mikey. Maybe a ranger.
He's the one he's the main, right? He's all
He's
about
the main.
adventure.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Ranger's not a bad choice. That's a tough one.
We'll put a pin in it because we're
Okay.
we're going to come back to it for
All right,
sure.
here we are at our number ones. So here we go. William, what do you got?
So I thought long and hard about this, but it wasn't too hard to come to the conclusion. This is actually my favorite movie of all time, and it just seems so obvious that it had to be the number one adventuring party of all time. The Fellowship of the Ring.
Oh,
the
yeah,
entire
for
Fellowship
sure.
from Fellowship of the Rings. It's just the best, man. Few franchises mean as much to me as everything Tolkien, and it's probably the single most iconic adventuring party in pop culture. I mean, I'd be hard pressed to think of a more iconic one.
Quick question: how did you feel about the Rings of Power, the Amazon series? Did you enjoy it?
So I haven't seen it. I will eventually. My thing here is it can be difficult for me when it comes to particularly book series that I have a deep connection with. And not too long before Rings of Power, I think it was Amazon as well, produced Wheel of Time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right.
And that is one of my favorite book series of all time. And they slaughtered that when it came to like how close it was to the book. Like they started it off making you feel like it was actually going to be pretty close, and then they just take a sharp left turn and they never look back. So I'm still hurt from that, so I haven't taken the plunge on Rings of Power yet.
Let me know when you do. I'd be really curious to hear your
will.
thoughts on it. All right. Now, I am not taking anything away from J.R.R. Tolkien. Considering getting a Tolkien tattoo, I love Tolkien. But I don't know how, especially after Ke Huy Quan's Oscar win, Rye the Movie Guy can put The Goonies at number 2 because Goonies never say die, Ryan. They are the absolute best adventuring party in film as far as I'm concerned, outside of Lord of the Rings. Yes. And now this is how I classified The Goonies. And I stayed away from Brand and I stayed away from the girls, no offense, but I think they were made Goonies toward the end. The core group of Goonies, Mouth, I went with Bard, but I'm actually willing to consider your take as that he's a thief, because you're right. He is kind of a thief. He's a rogue for sure. Mikey, this is one you had trouble with. Now, Mikey, this is our time down here. He's got the soliloquy. He's got the inspiration. He was certainly the Bard.
Mm.
Chunk,
I buy that, yeah.
Chunk, this is a tough one, right? I thought about this a lot. I think Chunk really has the best character arc because he starts off kind of scared and a coward, but then at the end he puts the sword in his teeth and he's the hero that saves the day. And I think I consider Chunk a monk. I think he had to really think about himself and find the energy within to become effective. So he found
monk?
some. Yeah. So
I don't
monks
like the ring of that.
No, monks function. First of all, they're a martial class, and I think he is. He uses ki energy or chi, depending on who you ask, and I think Chunk finds that in this movie. He's not a monk at the beginning, but damn it, I say he's a monk at the end. And obviously, Data's an artificer. I mean, no one's gonna argue that.
An artificer. Of course. Of course.
Of course. Of course.
So what topped The Goonies on my list, Matt?
Yeah, seriously. What topped The Goonies?
Another adventure film where a group of 4 go out and they're all kids, very much like The Goonies, but I went with Stand By Me. And
okay.
I also was thinking, another great one where these kids
That's
go on
actually
an
pretty
adventure,
good.
right? But
Yeah,
again, I
yeah.
needed help putting them together. I came up with the ones that I don't even know if these all fit well. But again, William's yelling at me that dwarf's not a class, but
No, he agreed with you.
No,
But
I defended you.
but I had Vern as a dwarf. Again, he's the fat kid.
Jerry O'Connell. Right.
Jerry O'Connell, right? I had him as a dwarf. Maybe it doesn't fit. Teddy, which is Corey. I had
River
as-
Phoenix, right?
No, River Phoenix is
Corey Feldman. Corey Feldman.
Yeah, Corey Feldman is Teddy. I had him as a wizard.
Okay.
Chris Chambers, who is River Phoenix, I had as the warrior, and Gordy, the star of the show, I went with Ranger again. Maybe only because he is leading the group, but I don't know.
I know I'm calling everyone a bard, but obviously Gordy is a bard. I mean, he tells stories and stuff around the campfire. He's the one. Tell us a story.
Bard. Yeah.
He's a bard. All right. See,
he's a bard for sure. Yeah.
This is why I needed help, but I had Stand By Me at my number one. You know,
it's a good choice. It's a good choice.
It is a good choice. I almost forgive you for not choosing Goonies.
Thank you. Quick honorable mentions here. Wizard of Oz. Maybe the very early
I
on.
thought about that one too.
First adventure party, right? And you could have fun naming those characters: the Lion, the Tin Man, Dorothy. I mean, even throw in Toto, right? It's a character.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Mm-hmm. The Lost City that just came out with Sandra Bullock, Channing Tatum, and Brad Pitt. It's just a little three-character. You guys haven't seen it, but a very fun kind of little adventure that they go on. And Temple of Doom. I mean, all the Indiana Jones movies, but I liked Temple of Doom in particular with Short Round, Indiana Jones, and the girl.
Kate Capshaw's character.
Kate Capshaw's, yeah. That always felt like those three really went on an adventure, to an exotic place. So I picked Temple of Doom. How about you, Matt?
The only two that haven't been mentioned, because we talked about Guardians, Avengers, Conan, and Fellowship, would be the A-Team. The movie is a little shaky, but
of course it is.
But through pop culture, the A-Team is a great adventuring party. And the Monster Squad, which just feels like kind of a poor man's Goonies, if we're being honest. But I love the Monster Squad. So those are my honorables.
Nice. I got two.
Go for it.
One didn't make the list because I don't think it didn't fit the party part of the adventure, and that was Legend with Tom Cruise.
Oh yeah, yes.
Which is it's such a good fantasy film, and it's full of adventure and the fantastical, but it really isn't that party, so I didn't think it really could make the list. And then one's actually an animated Disney movie back from, I want to say 1989, The Black Cauldron, which is real swords and sorcery, like a young man like becoming a hero, a princess, an evil wizard, all that classic stuff. But it's a good movie and a good book.
William, have you read the books?
Yes,
as a kid.
Yeah.
Oh, they're great, fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Jawheads,
although I know the author was not a fan of the movie.
Yeah, the movie's okay. I mean, it's very good, but obviously, usually the books are better, especially in the 80s.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
Jawheads, if we missed your favorite adventure party and you have Twitter pulled up, shoot us a tweet. We are at CinemaJaw. Our email, it's feedback@cinemajaw.com. Love to hear from you guys. We like to end the podcast with some fun trivia, and in honor of Dungeons & Dragons, Honor of Thieves, we are playing Chris Pine movie trivia. William, you're our guest, so you get to choose if you want to go first or let Matt K go first. I will say they start off easy.
Oh, I'll definitely go first.
All right. And there are steals, so if you don't know your question, Matt gets a chance. If Matt doesn't know his, you get a chance, vice versa. Here we go.
Okay.
Question one over to William. Chris Pine starred as James T. Kirk in Star Trek in 2009. Who directed the film?
J.J. Abrams.
That is correct. Question two over to Matt K. One of Chris Pine's first roles was in Princess Diaries 2. Which actress played the lead, Mia Thermopolis?
I only know this from the posters. I think it's Anne Hathaway, right?
He got it.
That is correct. Yes.
All right.
Ties it up at 1. Those were the softballs.
Okay.
Question 3 over to William. In 2016, Chris Pine starred in this film as a bank robber in Texas. Him and his brother are being chased by a Texas Ranger played by Jeff Bridges. Name the movie.
Oh, man. I know. The second I hear the name, I'm going to be like, dang it.
Chris Pine, bank robber, Texas. Him and his brother are being chased by a ranger played by Jeff Bridges.
I'm not going to be able to recall the name. I'm going to have to pass.
Matt, you got a chance for the steal and to take a lead.
As soon as you say Texas Ranger, my mind goes to Chuck Norris, and it pretty much just gets stuck at Chuck Norris. But we were just talking about this movie because what's his name is also in it. I forget the other actor's name. Doesn't matter. I think it's Hell or High Water.
It is.
Oh, okay.
That is correct.
William, you got to see that movie, dude. It's great.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh
I'll
yeah,
check it out.
it's really good. I mean, it's got the dude in it, so
Yeah. Love me some Jeff Bridges for sure.
2-1, Matt K. Question 4 is over to him. Chris Pine has one credit in a Spider-Man movie. Which one is it?
Holy crap.
This is to Matt K.
Oh, this one's to me? Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, dude. Okay, so does he do a voice in are you counting Spider-Verse? Does that count? It is a Spider-Man movie, I guess. That's my guess.
It is Spider-Verse. He actually voices Spider-Man, the one who gets killed in the very beginning of the movie.
Really?
Yeah, that's Chris Pine.
Ah, no shit. I had no idea.
True story.
Huh.
William, you got some work to do here. You're down 3-1. Question 5 is over to you. Just last year, Chris Pine appeared in Don't Worry, Darling. Who directed that movie?
Oh, I do know is it Olivia Wilde?
It is Olivia Wilde,
Right.
yes.
Bingo.
Making it a ball game here, 3-2. Question 6 over to Matt K. Matt, in 2016, Chris Pine starred in a spiritual sequel to Braveheart in which he played Robert the Bruce. It was a Netflix movie. Name it.
Really? This exists?
Oh, yeah. I believe it was even reviewed here on the podcast by myself. I don't think you saw it, but I believe I gave it a review here on the podcast.
I'll tell you, when Braveheart for a time, before Mel Gibson's Fall from Grace, was my favorite movie. If you ask me what's your favorite movie, I would quickly answer Braveheart. And the guy that plays Robert the Bruce in Braveheart looks so much like Matthew Broderick that for the longest time, I really thought Matthew Broderick was in Braveheart.
What an absolute ass.
That being said, I have no freaking idea. So Chris Pine plays Robert the Bruce?
Correct.
It's so incongruous in my brain. The Bruce.
Incorrect.
No clue.
Got a chance for a steal here, William, and to tie it up.
Man, there's no way. You said spiritual successor, right? So it's not Braveheart 2?
No, it is not.
I got nothing. No, I haven't seen this movie. No.
We're looking for The Outlaw King. The Outlaw King.
Yeah, I haven't even heard that one.
No.
So are there investors, by the way.
The score is 3-2, Matt K. Question 7 is over to William. He can tie it up here. William, Chris Pine has starred in one movie with Meryl Streep. It came out in 2014, and it was a musical.
Mamma Mia?
Incorrect. Matt, chance for a steal here. Chris Pine, Meryl Streep in a musical.
I know the movie. I just can't remember the freaking name of it.
Need an answer.
The Forest.
Into the Woods. You were on the right beat, Matt. You were on the right beat, but we cannot give it to you. Into the Woods. Here's where we stand. 3-2, and it's the last question of the game. It's over to Matt K, so he can win it on by answering the question correct. Matt, in 2010, Chris Pine starred in Unstoppable, an action film about a runaway train. Which two-time Oscar winner starred alongside him as Frank Barnes? Chris Pine and who in Unstoppable?
A two-time Oscar winner.
A two-time Oscar winner. Starred alongside Chris Pines.
Wow. Ryan Gosling.
Who doesn't have one Oscar to his name.
No, but he's in the Best Picture. I mean, it's close, right?
That is incorrect. William, you can tie it up here.
Oh, man.
Do you know who
no
starred
way.
with Chris Pine in Unstoppable? It's a two-time Oscar winner.
2010, you said?
2010.
I don't know. Bruce Willis. That's all I got.
Not a bad guess. We were looking for Denzel Washington. Denzel Washington and Chris Pine in Unstoppable.
Man. I need to watch more movies.
Matt wins this one, 3-2. Virtual handshake here.
Virtual fist bump.
Yeah, there we go.
If it came down to a tie, we call it a jawbreaker. This question would have been over to William. Better Chris Pine or Chris Evans?
Oh, Chris Evans.
Incorrect. It's Chris Pine.
He's made up some ground.
The real Jawbreaker was this: age of Chris Pine, closest to. Matt, you got to guess on how old Chris Pine is.
Well, as they point out in the D&D movie, he's getting some gray at the edges. And honestly, he's a lot more gray if you watch like the press stuff. I don't know if he's crossed 50 yet, though. 49 years old.
Lock him in at 49. William, you got to guess?
I was going with 44.
Give that one to William. 42 for Chris Pine.
Wow.
You're really aging him, Matt K. He's 42.
I mean, he's going gray early, you guys.
Well, he's been around for a long time, so I think that's part of it, too.
I'm older than him, and I'm not half as gray. I look twice as young as Chris Pine.
But
Just
you're not
half as
nearly as
good-looking.
handsome.
Yeah. I'm working on it.
Well, it brings us to the end of a very fun and entertaining Jaw. This was a great adventure party to be part of. We got to thank our guest. This was great meeting you, William, and thanks for coming on Cinema Jaw.
Yeah, thank you. No, this was a blast. I'd come on anytime.
Absolutely. We got to have you back. And thanks to all the Jawheads. Please, wherever you're listening to this, click subscribe or leave a review. Both things help us out tremendously.
For sure. And we need to thank our engineer, our editor. I think he had a answer for us on a late fish tank. I believe they had an answer for us on a late fish tank. Phil?
Yes, I do. So Matt's that guy question. I believe that would be Tracy Walter. Is that who you were thinking of, Matt?
Yes.
How could we forget the other FBI guy next to Paul Rubin in Matilda? How dare you?
True. He's also in Repo Man. I love that movie. So, yes, he pops up in so many films that I love. How could I forget? Me?
No, to Phil. So Phil can say
What,
thank
do
you or whatever. You know.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's okay, Matt. I'll forgive you for forgetting Tracy Walter. That's okay. And yeah, of course, I wouldn't be anywhere else. I got the opportunity to do what all Jawheads would love and throw Matt under the bus in person. It's been great. Why would I miss tonight?
Last but not least, thank you to our Patreons for supporting the show. If you want to join our family of Patreons, please do so over at patreon.com/cinemajaw. Until next week, I'm Ryan the Movie Guy.
I'm Matt K.
And
keep on jawing about the movies.